Good morning, everybody. This is Carlos Saldivia and Rob Knorr and Todd Bartley with today's version of Pushback on Penn Carlos Saldivia Patriots Radio. And it is good to be back. And there's been a lot of things that have been happening in the last 2 weeks. So I guess I'll start with a short opening and pass it to my friends. You know, our role in this show is to hold people accountable and to teach people how to be accountable at the same time, to stand on their own 2 feet, given the political ideas and the things about life, living in this country, to have them be able to stand on their own 2 feet and defend them. It's to set an example for people, to not be satisfied with superficial impressions, to read things, and especially to read into things carefully, and not be satisfied with a rough understanding of the whole. To not react, but to know. To help forge those loose ideas that you might have in your head, or uninformed ideas, into firm values, understanding, and a working knowledge. So one of the things that I've done in the month of August is think a lot about things. Put myself in a position of leaders and politicians and people that are in charge of organizations and institutions and corporations, and think about what I would do if I was in their position with contingencies that are very, very large. And I kept coming back to one thing all the time. And that is, I would have communicated the idea: we trust you, do your best. We trust you, do your best. I wish Republican leadership knew their mission well enough to distill it simply as I just did. Because at some point, we have to stop blaming the media and the institutions and the Democrats and the left and the never Trumpers for amplifying the latest Trump delusion, and start blaming the tens of millions of insane Americans who fall for it every time. They're deluded, dangerous people who should be confronted as such. We are a nation that has cowards in it. That's why we must protect ourselves at all times, especially after the bell. So it requires a concentrated effort to have American citizenship. It's not enough to get up in the morning and actually have the white privilege or otherwise to be within the borders of this country, to wake up and have an iPhone to wake you up, and running hot and cold water to shower in, and fancy gizmos to brush your teeth, and the luxury of having pets and food to feed them, and the ability to go and choose to have breakfast or dine out in numerous different restaurants, different types of restaurants. It is a privilege to do that. But it requires accountability and responsibility and effort and love and caring and nurturing and embracing and thoughtfulness, because we are at war. What are you going to do about it? You better summon whatever it is inside you to decide what side you're on and what you're prepared to do to defend the idea and the decision that you choose. Because it's war. Todd, good morning.
Good morning, Carlos. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning.
So,
thanks for being here. Yeah.
Rob, how are you?
Doing great. Had the storm knocked a tree limb down. I'm going to cut that up later. But other than that, everything going good with me.
You're going to use the wood to forge arrows?
Probably not. I would be, for defense, I think I'm more of a technologically advanced person with firearms than arrows, but, you know.
Pennsylvanians like arrows. I do anyway. It's the people that live in New York City that are screwed without arrows. So
Rob made you for a bonfire.
a lot of people don't know that Carlos has been taking a media sabbatical, blackout sabbatical for the month of August. I try not to answer my phone, no email, no texting, and certainly no social media. So I'm flying blind, really, as to what's going on in the last month. So we've decided that Rob and Todd would bring up today's agenda kind of off the cuff, because there's a lot of things happening, and then I would react to it blindly, which I love to do.
Well, with that said, Carlos, welcome back after the special assignment a week ago, and congratulations on the special assignment. With that said, we'd sure like to see you, by the way, with your video. I don't know if there's technical difficulty or not, but it is what it is. So that said, some things happened leading up to last week's show that you didn't get a chance to react to last week. So Rob and I would like to give you the opportunity to react to some things you may have seen or heard or found out about that happened going into last week's show.
Well, why don't you tee me up and let me know what you want to talk about.
So, Rob, there happened to be something that happened Monday into Tuesday into my driveway. Would you like to elaborate not this past week, the week before last?
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Todd's been doing an incredible job covering a story about a baseball team in Williamsport, a high school baseball team that traveled to Myrtle Beach. 2 students were sexually assaulted. He's covered for 2 years now the cover-up that occurred with people in positions of power in Williamsport over that. He'd been receiving threats periodically, but they actually firebombed his car last weekend. I believe it was Sunday or Monday morning at 4 a.m.
Tuesday.
Yeah, Monday into Tuesday at 4 a.m. So we covered this last week extensively, but sadly Carlos wasn't with us. So yeah, I also would like to hear Carlos's take on that.
So I did speak to Todd about it when he called me in the morning. Actually, Jason Fitzgerald is the one that called me and told me, did you hear what happened to Todd? I said, no. I think that the most significant, the first thing that comes to my mind is the fact that my son, who's on the job in New Jersey, kind of heard about it at the same time that I did, and he said, "Oh, So this means Todd was right. That's my first reflection on it, because if you're going to firebomb the car of a journalist, that means that you're trying to shut up the journalist because the journalist is right. What we need to decide is, are we the type of people in the Williamsport area that are okay with journalists being firebombed? Are we? Is that where we are? Because personally, I don't care, because I'm ready either way. But you're not ready for this. You're not ready for this type of escalation. You want it to be, the Saturday Evening Post cover America, don't you? Then you better start behaving like it, or else. Because we're not tolerating this crap. We're just not doing it. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care if you wear a dress or you don't. We're not putting up with your abuse and your criminality. Period. End of story. The end. That's it. We're not doing it. I'm going to convince everyone that I can to not do it either, because this is one of the worst violent. I'll put it to you this way. This has never happened in our community. Like, never. So, yeah, Todd's right. Everything that Todd has said is right. And I have to believe that, especially everything that he said in part 19 that led to this firebombing, is especially right. And those people should be looked at under the microscope and should be questioned. They're automatically suspects because of the proximity of him writing the story and the firebombing. I want answers, and I don't care. I don't care. I want the answers. I want action.
Todd, to bring this to
I want convictions.
To bring this to kind of like what we see happening around the country, I do think it's tragic, and my heart still goes out to you and your family, but there seems to be a sick irony that at the exact time when a journalist who basically stood on his own through grave personal risk to your family, to your career, to try to seek justice for two people that were sexually assaulted and people in positions of power that are supposed to protect those kids, helping cover it up. It's ironic that the weapon used to silence you was fire. At the same time, when we see our countries burning down, and we see people, particularly in the Democratic Party, saying, no, this is legitimate, or it's mostly peaceful. It's a fiery but mostly peaceful protest. Who could blame the people that firebombed your car from thinking it's not acceptable? The lesson that they're being taught by people and institutions in power in this country is it's okay if you disagree with someone to attack their property with fire, to physically intimidate them. So I just was seeing some parallels there and wanted to know if you wanted to comment on this is how dangerous it becomes when you say it's okay for political reasons. Well, the next step is it's okay for personal reasons to firebomb someone's property.
So, Rob, I appreciate you bringing this up. My understanding is from talking to different sources in and around the community, the word on the street is that it was just a demonstration of a peaceful protest of objection to the article in Part 19. They just so happen to use fire, as you mentioned, and some other things as well. I think it's abhorrent. I think it's sick that you go to that level as an individual. And I'm going to let state police do the investigation. It's well underway. North Central PA, Just did a story on the arson, so if anybody wants to go read that, I'll also be attaching that to part 20 that was released last night of the Myrtle Beach story. And they kind of chronicle what has been deemed an arson. And for any local media outlet, and North Central PA did a great job, by the way, in this arson story, for any local media outlet to try to downplay this arson as a hoax, you need to resign today. You need to forfeit your pension, because you've absolutely handed in any credibility you had in this story at all, ever.
Well,
To even think that that's a hoax, it's a joke. I mean, honest to God, it's a joke. You really believe I'm going to put my own family at risk and my neighbors for what could have possibly happened at 4 o'clock in the morning? Really?
Yes, they do, because this is how they operate. The Williamsport Sun Gazette has a publisher who's related to the principal of the Williamsport Area School District's high school. That's why you don't see stories about what happened in Myrtle Beach.
Carlos, can I posit a theory for a second?
Nepotism. It's the same old, boring crap. Bored. Seen the movie, read the book. It bores me. But they believe that they still have standing. I'm here to tell you, Laura and Robert, you have no standing. No one trusts you. You haven't broken a story since Nostradamus. Okay? You haven't broken it. You don't break stories. If it wasn't for the Associated Press, you wouldn't have standing. Nobody trusts you. You did nothing when the police chief 17 years ago went on a camping trip in Canada and used private property evidence and drove the evidence to Canada to go fishing. You said nothing when the Williamsport Police Department had 2 officers fondle a girl in the back of the police car. No stories. It was the dreaded John Bogie and the Harrisburg Patriot who broke that story. They're all seemingly for sale. Why would we trust these people? We are here in this mess because of you people.
And again, to bring this back to kind of how this applies nationally, did I don't know, Carlos, if you saw this. Todd, did you see the CNN cryon where you saw a CNN anchor in Kenosha standing in front of the city burning down, talking about it, and the cryon on CNN was fiery but mostly peaceful protest in Kenosha? Like, take that to how the Sun Gazette, a local Williamsport paper, treated you being firebombed, your vehicle being firebombed at your home where your family is. And they treated it like, well, it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't near the structure. And, this is the type of mindset. Again, we could see how the problems that we see at the local levels are manifesting at the national level as well. And so because you are subject of ire and subject to someone that you're seen not only as a competitor, but someone that people with personal relationships at the paper, the Sun Gazette, feel that you're exposing people they're connected to. So they downplay and they gaslight us in the obvious heinousness of what happened to try to downplay it, just like CNN's trying to downplay these fires and these cities burning down as well. But it was mostly peaceful. Maybe Todd did it. Maybe it was a hoax. Oh, and it was just a protest against what they thought was an unfair story. Oh, and his family wasn't really in that much danger anyways. I mean, I find it truly revolting.
And then you
this
put the cherry on
Wegmans
top.
pancake gal, by the way. This is not the Wegmans pancake gal with actors portraying Wegmans managers who are not really managers at Wegmans. That's not a hoax. This was the real deal. Now, let me posit a theory based on what Carlos said about for sale. When this story breaks, okay, nationally, and everybody that should have been here over the next 2 weeks from a national media standpoint is again parked up on both hills covering this story, okay? There will be a for sale sign in the window at the Williamsport Sun Gazette because Bob Nutting and the Ogden companies aren't going to put up with this nonsense at this paper anymore.
Yeah, but it'll be too late because here's the bad news for them. Nobody cares. We don't care. I don't care if the Sun Gazette told this story right or wrong. I don't care. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
But to your point, what I'm saying is that corner block of real estate is going to be on the market. The press is already being used in Altoona, so they're not printing a press here or printing a paper anymore.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Let me make my case. I think that we in hockey, okay, and you got Rob Noor up at the red corner over there. He's a Pittsburgh fan, you know, Steelers fan, Penguins fan.
Yeah.
Let's go Pens.
Yeah.
I forgot you too. We have an idea that's called shortening the bench. Shortening the bench. So in hockey, you usually run 4 lines, okay, against each other. So you have 4 different sets of lines against the opponent's 4 different sets of lines. And in the playoffs, when you want to be able to get your best players out there more, you shorten the bench and you shorten it down to 2 to 3 lines, okay? Sometimes to 2.5 lines, okay? And you rotate 1 player every other shift, okay? That's what's going to happen. And the part that's going to be shortened is going to be the Williamsport Sun Gazette because they have no value. They have no value. They have no value. What is the value that these newspapers, forget about the Sun Gazette, that any of these newspapers have? They have no value in our lives. And things that don't have a value in our lives, they get cut. So I'm hoping that happens sooner than later, but I don't care. It has no value. I don't rely on them on any news at all because I don't trust them because they're for sale.
But people do.
There's been too many stories in our community where people have gotten seriously hurt and they didn't cover the story because they just don't have the manpower, they don't have the will, they don't have the money, they don't have the investment. And that's really what the bottom line is, isn't it? Right? Isn't it? Like, why are we doing this? No one's paying us. We know this because we're invested in our communities. We're doing this because we're invested in America. And we're not going to make believe who the bad guys are. We're not going to make believe who the bad guys are. They are the bad guys.
So you've had an opportunity prior to the firebombing Monday into Tuesday. You had a chance.
It sickens me. I haven't been clear. It sickens me. I am so mad that I have to, yes, I'm censoring myself because I can't really say what I really want to say because I'm so mad. And that's a dangerous place to be for a guy like me. Because seriously, I don't care what you think because you rarely do. I don't care what you think because you rarely do. And I have thought about this for 2 weeks and I am furious. And I'm not looking to try to stoke anybody up, but I'm trying, like I said before, at the open, I'm trying to help you understand how to hold other people accountable. And we are going to hold these people accountable, starting with the people that were mentioned in your story, part 19.
Todd, do you have any...
And that starts with you calling the district attorney and demanding that he look at part 19 and investigate this. It starts with us. We are the sovereign. We call these people up and we demand that they investigate this. They work for us. We are the sovereigns. They are our representatives. Balance, you know balance? Okay, balance. And you ask them to investigate this. Everyone has a phone. Call up the district attorney this week and demand that this happen, or else more of this will happen.
So, with you being on a special assignment last weekend, as Part 19 broke just prior to last week's show, you haven't had an opportunity to share with the audience, or Rob or I, in this forum, your thoughts on Part 19 and the revelation that came out in Part 19 titled The Millionaire Way.
So, one of the things that has organically occurred is that in bringing up this issue of what happened in Myrtle Beach, there are literally dozens and dozens and dozens of stories that people are now privately reaching out to us and telling us about the behavior and the way that the Williamsport Area School District deals with people for the last 30 years. So now we are getting an extended timeline of 30 years of horrible stories of injustice regarding the Williamsport Area School District. And if I were to encapsulate this in a marketing slogan, this is what it would sound like. We're not going to tell you anything about what's going on because we don't have to. That's the slogan. That's, by their actions, what the Williamsport Area School District is saying to us for the last 30 years. I ask you, what are you prepared to do? Because on this one, you got them clean. You had possession of a letter that someone that was in Myrtle Beach in an official capacity as a mandated reporter. I would love for you to put up the link to what a mandated reporter is, Todd, and have people peruse it. Who wrote a letter to the Williamsport Area School District basically outlining a threat, telling them that if they go after his client, you know, the lead perpetrator, suspected perpetrator in both attacks, that he would, what was the quote? Let everybody know, come out and tell everyone.
The paraphrase was that there would be an unmasking of everybody in the rooms at that point,
right?
And that there may be legal ramifications if his client were treated any differently than anybody else in those rooms.
Right. So my question to you is, George Lepley, is that it?
That is the author of the letter.
You are a mandated reporter. You don't need to threaten the district to tell us exactly what happened, do you? George wasn't smart enough to understand that you already had the letter. And George lied to you. It's okay, George can lie to you. He can lie to you all day long. Let's see what he does under oath. Let's see what he does under oath, being a mandated reporter. I want people out there to understand that to this day, to this very day, today is what? August 29th, 2020. This happened sometime in March 2018. To this day, no mandated reporter from the Williamsport area or anybody that was on the team representing the high school or the Williamsport area school district, nobody, 0 people have called the Myrtle Beach Police Department in their role as a mandated reporter to tell them that there were 2 sexual attacks on their watch. Should I stand up and applaud? Because it's worthy of an applause, right? That's how I feel. That's how I feel.
Rob.
That's where I would start the investigation as the assistant, the district attorney, as to the very first suspects of what happened to you, given the proximity of the letter to the firebombing. Yeah.
Rob, with what Carlos just said, would you expound upon your feelings and your reaction to his statement about no mandated reporters 2+ years later have ever reached out to the Myrtle Beach Police Department?
I mean, it's disgusting. This is always ask yourself this. If you're listening to a story, understand, for me also, as someone who's outside the community, I'm learning this story, as many of our audiences as well, that's not from Williamsport, because I didn't know a lot of this background. So if you're listening to this story, you might be thinking like, okay, so there's allegedly video, which there is video evidence of the attacks that took place, and there's things like that. But I still, there could be multiple sides to a story. What's the truth? This is a fact that is undisputed. Undisputed. There was an allegation. Correct, Todd? We at least know that. There's no disputing that.
Correct.
With an allegation, a mandated reporter is mandated to report that. So, and it makes sense, right? Because we have people that are in charge of the safety of our children. Your teachers, coaches, things like that. We have a system set up that we would like to ensure that those people, their first priority is to ensure the safety of our children. And so they're mandated reporters. It is beyond dispute that there was an allegation and that the mandated reporters were made aware of it and have failed each and every time to do their duty as a mandated reporter, and instead have done everything possible to bury the story. So if you're out there, now I assure you, I go further than that, as Todd's reporting's been excellent, and he showed proof not only that the incident happened, but all of the specifics that we talk about a lot in this show. But if you haven't followed all that, just know this. 2 young people were sexually assaulted. There was at least an allegation of it. If you say, but wait, I don't know if that happened or not. There was an allegation, and instead of taking it seriously, every mandated reporter that was supposed to report this has done the exact opposite of what a mandated reporter is supposed to do. And instead of reporting on it, has done everything possible to hush this up and quiet it. That should infuriate every single person that's hearing of this story, every single person that finds sexual assault to be heinous, every person that thinks that underprivileged people, such as children that need adults to ensure their safety, should receive justice. And I don't care what your political orientation is. I don't care what the political orientation of the mandated reporters that failed in their duty is. This is incredibly heinous. And now the reporter that solely stood up and brought this to light to get justice for these kids is being personally attacked. And by the way, Todd, if I'm not wrong, this isn't the first time you've been attacked. Your property's been attacked or you've been threatened. It's just the newest in an escalation. And for people around the area that should know better, like local newspapers like the Sun Gazette and other people that apparently there's chatter in town, to imply that somehow this was a faked incident or that it wasn't that big of a deal or something like that, it truly is disgusting. And you could start to see, how could we have people that in good conscience that are defending the actions of not investigating and mandated reporting sexual assault allegations of children? That's the type of people we're dealing with. And now, because they realize that, I don't know who firebombed your car, obviously, but my interpretation is, or my guess is, it could be that people are upset because they realize how truly revolting their actions have been. And so they need to stop someone like Todd from informing the public of how disgusting those actions are at all cost. And that's why the violence and intimidation is coming towards Todd, because they know there is no defense just on that level of, I'm a mandated reporter and I buried a story about sexual assault of 2 children.
And here's the evidence. And yes, you're absolutely right. We don't know who firebombed this car, but I would start, if I was the AG or the DA, I would start with the people named in the story 19. But here's the evidence. Here's the evidence. You ready? What kind of American man gets accused of something and doesn't stand up and defend himself?
Someone who's guilty.
Which one of these men that were mandated reporters that worked for the Williamsport area school district has stood up and defended themselves? You know how they stood up and defended themselves, Robert? No, there's no there there. See, the problem with elites is that the higher the status, the more we believe them. That's the problem. And the history of the Williamsport area school district of silence and inaction and denial has a simple translation. Like I said before, we don't care because we don't have to. Hiding behind legal confidentiality is completely different than making an effort to honor the system of trust that's required by elected officials to the sovereign. You know, us, the voters, the taxpayers. Without it, there's no separation or balance of power. And it's degraded and destroys the system. How can you believe these people when they tell you that your children are safe in our hands? And how can this not be hollow from the people that say, the very same people that say that the very same institution that they're running is currently systemically racist? Please stop talking.
And that's an important...
You're killing us.
That's an important point that, again, at the national level, that we need to understand. One of my problems with Black Lives Matter, and I have many, many, which we'll probably talk about here as the show goes on, but one of the problems is, even if you do legitimately show that there are problems in the black community worth solving, which I totally agree with, when we allow people to virtue signal and shirk personal responsibility of what they've done to make situations worse by saying catchphrases such as Black Lives Matter or systemic racism, that becomes a tool in which people can actually lead to physical harm being implicated on people, but they shirk responsibility. So in the case of Williamsport, we see that school board members are out there ranting about systemic racism and praising Black Lives Matter. The entire idea at the core value of Black Lives Matter would be the idea that there are people less privileged or that are discriminated against or something like that aren't being protected by people in positions of power. So they'll virtue signal to that, saying cheap, cheap words. But when they actually had a chance to protect underprivileged people, children who were sexually assaulted, they dropped the ball. And we see this occurring all over the world, especially in the United States, where supposedly I'm to believe that these institutions in the United States have been racist for, the entire history of our country. And so we're supposed to elect people that have been in control of those institutions for 50 years to fight the fact that they've been institutionally racist. We're supposed to support corporations that engage in sweatshop labor and have business relationships with the communist government of China that's currently interring Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. But they get away with it because they say, well, Black Lives Matter. And so they themselves are allowed to act in a way that it's exploitive to people that don't have the ability to defend themselves, while virtue signaling, oh, look how virtuous I am because I've paid lip service to people that don't have the ability to defend themselves. That's exactly what's happening in this story. Instead of doing the right thing, members of the school board and other people in positions of power in Williamsport are saying, oh, let's focus on national issues. Let's focus on Black Lives Matter. We need to protect the innocent and protect the vulnerable, while their actions have exploited the very vulnerable that they're tasked with taking care of.
Right. They've been sitting on their hands for years. For years. I have stories of people calling me and telling me stories for 30 years of the enabling and disgraceful behavior that the district has, that the Williamsport area district has permitted. For what? What is the meat of it for us? It's not. The meat of it is for them, for the elites. We need to dismantle the system. I have a friend. His name is Dave. I respect him very, very much. Solid community guy in Williamsport. And what he says rings in my ears every single time I hear this and stuff like this. The city of Williamsport has the lowest class, upper class in the country. This is what it looks like. All of this was facilitated by the elites at the Williamsport area school district, at institutions like the Williamsport Police Department and the Lycoming County Prosecutor's Office, and media companies like the Williamsport Sun Gazette, who doesn't report on anything because they're too afraid politically to stick their neck out and have it affect their advertising dollars. Yes. At the expense of the community getting hurt. We don't need the elites. We don't need them. Useless. Where is the meat? Where is the meat? Where is the benefit to us of having these high exalted betters, our betters, telling us what to do and how to think? Well, here's a tip, okay? Don't ever tell us what to do ever again. Start there. Because if anything, 2020 has literally punctuated and underscored the fact that the elites don't know what they're doing, and when you apply pressure to their necks with your boot, they don't know what to do. No contingency. Like baseball. Major League Baseball opens up, and 5 cases on one team of people that are tested positive, of athletes who are in their prime and have the very best defense immune systems in the entire world, likely, and you don't know what to do, and you start considering shutting down baseball because of 5 cases. This is who they are. This is who they are. They don't know what they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what to do. They're lost. They're lost. We don't know what to do. But please elect us. No.
So I don't know if we want to transition. There's a lot.
Actually, I have a question for Carlos and for Rob as well. You mentioned the Williamsport Bureau of Police, and last night, part 20 of the series dropped.
Okay.
And it chronicles the interaction between the Williamsport Bureau of Police, the school district, and the Myrtle Beach Police Department.
Yes. So you sent me the story, obviously, and I can comment on that first, and you can throw it to Rob. And tell me if I'm getting this. Tell me if I get the gist of the story wrong. The Williamsport Area School District, when you send them right to know requests, they have all these techniques to be able to put you off. I'm not saying they're lying to you. I'm just saying they put you off. And the school district does that. And then you did that to the mayor's office because you asked for right to know request about Myrtle Beach through the mayor and the Williamsport Area School District. And then you did that to the Williamsport Police Department. And we could even go as far to believe that those 3 are colluding, okay? Especially via the level of elites that are on top of those things. They collude together. We're going to get Todd. It's okay. Here's what they can't control. As I understand the story. They can't control what the Myrtle Beach Police Department gives you in a right to know request that you ask from them. And that's the gist of the story. The gist of the story is that Todd Bartlett, you know, the hardworking little hobbit bastard that he is, went out and he got right to know requests from Myrtle Beach, and he got a ton of stuff, video and audio and emails and texts, and it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. And he got nothing from the school district and the mayor and the police department. And the right to know request response from the Williamsport Police Department, which is a legal document under perjury, under penalty of perjury, says that there's nothing there. And the Myrtle Beach Department sent tractor trailers worth of information to Todd that says that what the Williamsport Police Department said is not true. It's not true. See, the Williamsport Police Department can't control the right to know requests that the Myrtle Beach Police Department sends Todd. And because of that, Todd went and he researched it. And he found, what would you call them, Todd?
Any number of
Inconsistencies.
Inaccuracies.
Inaccuracies.
And I'm being kind with that word, inaccuracies.
It's completely kind. You're a loving man. Yeah. They're saying that they didn't know. Here's the part where an average person, like Robert, who lives in Clarion County, he doesn't live in Lycoming County. Here it is, Robert. How could it possibly be that there's a treasure trove of information from right to know requests from Myrtle Beach going to Todd, who was never called on this case? To this day, they haven't been called. And the Williamsport Police Department has nothing.
It's unreal.
I'm sorry for laughing. I think of Dave. We have the lowest class, upper class in the country. Because they're stupid. You're going to get Todd. Okay. See, how do you get someone that has the truth in their hand? In the clutches of their hand, how do you get them? You don't. That's what Todd did. In part 20. You let him run free. Let them lie to him. And now, you guys better lawyer up. Every single one of you better lawyer up. Because you've been caught. See, no one gave the Myrtle Beach Police Department the memo to lie to Todd. Not only does Todd know the story, he knows the entire story. And you guys will never know what part he knows and what part he doesn't know. And you, by law, are going to have to answer those questions, because there's a reason why we have sunshine laws. And there's a reason why we have right to know laws. And there's no way that you're going to be able to hide it forever, and certainly not going to be able to hide it from the Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania. How's it feel? How's it feel,
Your
guys?
reaction to that?
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
I mean,
The
again,
stupidity is literally unbelievable. As a filmmaker, if I made it up, Rob would say, Carlos, I don't believe it. No, I didn't make it up, Rob. No, Carlos, I don't believe you. No, Rob, I didn't make it up. That's the truth.
listen, the way that this happens, I say this all the time, and that's why I'm so happy to be, doing a show with Todd, who's a fantastic journalist. But a lot of conservatives understand.
He's all right.
A lot of conservatives understand correctly that the media is the enemy of the people. It absolutely is.
Yep.
They do not hold truth to power. They bury the truth for the powerful. But one of the things you'll realize is when you see like these White House press correspondent dinners and all the awards that they give each other, they pat themselves on the back and they talk about a bunch of historical quotes that talk about the importance of the free press. The irony is they're right. The free press is important. It's just they're not the free press. So they're correctly articulating every criticism against them. You wear the mantle of the free press, but you're not. You're propagandists. And so to respond to what you're saying here, Carlos, how did this happen? How did they expect to get away with this? You want to know why? Because of arrogance. Because they didn't expect an actual real journalist to exist. Because their entire careers, they've been allowed to do whatever they want without being exposed. So why should this time be any different?
It's how they've always operated.
That's right. And the problem is they ran into a buzzsaw of Todd that was not going to be intimidated, was not going to be shamed, was not going to be physically or financially threatened into backing down from this story. And so
It's
now
like the little penguin, Pittsburgh Penguin that could, right, Todd?
this is
with all of our cups, by the way.
But this is the exact same thing you see when you look at national stories. You see these stories and you're like, how could anyone, Who in their right mind could see what CNN's doing with the city on fire behind them and have the cry on fiery but mostly peaceful protest? Well, the reason is they've gotten away with it for decades. No one had the nerve or the backbone to stand up and challenge them. Right. And so
the voter apathy is
right.
Is amazing.
So why are they going after Todd? Well, in this case, it could be people that literally may be facing grievous consequences legally, like not just being sued, but could be looking at serious jail time. Maybe they're trying to silence someone that's reporting on that in hopes to avoid that. Or it could be that just like we see that people in the national press that don't follow the narrative, the mainstream narrative, the way they're attacked, and we also see it simultaneously with the way that the media is calling for censoring independent content creators, like a lot of what I do online. All of this has a recurring theme. They need to control the press because the press is important. They need to control the flow of information because their beliefs are so heinous. The only way the American people will accept it is if they control the information and don't leave the other side of the story to get out.
Exactly right. So could you, and I know you want to get to Todd real quick, but could you tell me the story that you told me this morning in our pre-pro with respect to you being censored on Twitch?
Yeah.
Can you just really quickly tell me, use that as an example and roll into the fact that that's part of the censorship that the media is also using to be able to silence regular Americans.
Now, let me just say real quick, this has yet to come to fruition, but this is what I'm being told by many people. I did a 3.5-hour debate yesterday. One of the issues that came up had to do with transsexual issues. My stance on transsexual, I'm not a bigot. I have trans friends. I don't care. I don't care at all. We were talking about whether or not we should be teaching different types of sexuality in high school. I said that what we should be teaching in sex ed courses is how to have safe sex. We should not be promoting any sort of sexuality. That's it. And over the course of that, I was accused of being a bigot because at one point someone said to me, I don't see what the problem is with, like, you know, drag queen story hour. My problem with it is these stories you see of people that are sexualized showing up. I don't mind that, like, if someone wears a dress that's not biologically a female. What I mind is if they're wearing lingerie. That's sexualization of children. I said that that's a problem. And they said, well, what's the problem with teaching boys they could wear dresses? I said, no, that's not what I'm identifying. If a man just wants to wear a dress and read to children, I don't care. I don't want them to wear a sexualized dress. I was accused of being a bigot. Anyways, what I was told by many people during that show behind the scenes was this is a common trick that's used by people on the left on the platform of twitch.tv. What they do is they goad you. Twitch apparently has a zero tolerance policy that you're not allowed to question the narrative that there's no biological difference between men and women. And if you question that narrative, you will immediately be banned. And because I'm someone that's a conservative on that platform, routinely debating left-wing people, many of which debate me in good faith, they didn't like my voice because I'm raising awareness on that platform that's dominated by leftists, that the way we're pigeonholed by them as the right being these monsters of having bad ideas is not accurate. So we'll see. There's a good chance that I'll be banned from Twitch over those statements, which are not bigoted, not controversial. There was a
So
person.
repeat that part again. Twitch has a policy.
Yeah, apparently.
I want the people to understand clearly what that policy is.
Right, and apparently Twitch, I know Twitter has this policies where you're not allowed to question biological difference between men and women. So, for example, I know on Twitter, and we'll see if that's what Twitch's policy actually is. That's what I'm being told. But we see on Twitter, for example, that you could be banned from Twitter from saying things like there are only two genders, or for saying something like men can't be women. Now, it doesn't matter if you believe in those positions or not. The fact that we have these companies that control the flow of information so much, those aren't bigoted positions. There's scientific rationale. There's legitimate reasons to hold those beliefs. And so the fact that we're censoring people that have beliefs that are not outside the mainstream is truly heinous. And we'll see, like, I do know this, that I was told, regardless of what Twitch's decision with my channel ultimately is, and let me say, I'm not saying this is a victim. I don't care at all. My Twitch channel is really small. Right. That's fine. If they get rid of me, I don't care. That's fine. They can do what they want. But I was told that there were dozens
Locals.com, baby. Locals.com.
Yeah, I know. I was told there were dozens of people that couldn't wait to be like, gotcha, we're reporting you.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. How do you know which side is on the correct side of history? It's the side. Well, show me one time in history that the side that was advocating for censorship, for cancel culture, for book burnings, for saying certain things couldn't be talked about. Show me one time in history when that side was on the right side in history. I'm not doing that. I welcome any beliefs on my show. People that disagree with us could come on this show here. We don't care. We're not seeking to get people deplatformed because they have mainstream positions that we disagree with. In fact, do you know how many times I debate communists? I find communism to be a reprehensible ideology that's led to hundreds of millions of people's dead. Yet I'm not asking for them to be kicked off the platform. So it just truly shows the censorious nature and how they need to completely control the flow of information.
Yeah, speaking of monetization online, I found it rich that Bob Rowley and his team at the Williamsport Sun-Gazette decided to post the story about the car bombing in my driveway behind their paywall. Now that's rich, right?
No, it's just incompetence. If you're going to do that,
right? You're monetizing a hoax, really?
No, please. What monetization? Monetizing. Okay.
So
no one's reading the story because no one's paying. Okay.
Right.
And this is the stupidity that I'm saying. Why do the story at all if you're going to put it behind a paywall? If you're going to try to hurt Todd by having no one see it, okay? I know what you're saying. You're saying, people have to pay to see it. No, I'm saying the opposite. They're hiding it behind a paywall to try to keep it from people. Then if that's the case, why do the story?
Well, and we don't know who actually did the story because there wasn't even a staff report or a name of an author or
and when you gave a quote,
they were of it.
And when you gave a quote, they didn't use the quote.
They didn't use my quote.
Come on, you're really good. You guys are not journalists, right? You're not.
You can find my quote in part number 20. Now let's just I want to put a bow on number 20 and get your reactions, and then we'll transition because I know we could go for days and days and days on Myrtle Beach. What was interesting to note were some remarks that were documented by the detective investigating on the Myrtle Beach side in the Violent Crimes Division the first time he spoke with people here in Lycoming County. You can go read this word for word in part 20. That he was told that Detective Weber had no knowledge of the incident before he did. That the lead attorney for juvenile cases in the county had no knowledge of the case. That the Williamsport Bureau of Police had no knowledge of the case, took no report. They were actually sent, Myrtle Beach Police were sent to the South Williamsport School District before being sent back to the Williamsport School District. And Carlos, I want to see your reaction to this in real time. Same thing with Rob.
Repeat that.
I want to see your reactions in real time to what I'm about to say.
No. Repeat what you just said about
the Williamsport Bureau of Police
Yeah.
called back to Myrtle Beach. This is in the story, in the voicemail. It's on tape. It's also transcribed. The Williamsport Bureau of Police sent the Myrtle Beach Police Department to the South Williamsport School District resource officer.
Oh, right.
South Williamsport.
Do you want me to comment on that?
Well, just stand ready. Hold fast. And then one of the most ironic twists in the story is that after that resource officer calls his counterpart, who is a member of the Williamsport Bureau of Police, school resource officer Stoltzfus tells the resource officer South Williamsport he has no knowledge of the case either in September of 2018. But according to the statement put out by the Williamsport Area School District in January of this year, that same resource officer and others participated and took an active role in the investigation into what happened in Myrtle Beach. And from all documented accounts, that investigation concluded June 5th of 2018. Would somebody like to explain that to me, please?
So
Carlos,
I
the floor
want
is
to make
yours.
sure I want to make sure that Rob understands what you just said. Myrtle Beach Police.
He can't help himself, Rob. He keeps laughing about it. I mean, he can't help himself.
God forgive me. This is so stupid. The Myrtle Beach Police Department called the Williamsport Police Department asking about the Myrtle Beach incident. They left a message, or they were told that they were going to get back to them. Officer Reeder who is currently suing the Williamsport Police Department.
He was a Williamsport police officer?
He's still a Williamsport
Sergeant.
Police Department.
Okay.
Reader.
He's suing the
At the time.
Williamsport Police Department for some, undisclosed resentment that I can't remember right now. Calls back the Myrtle Beach Police Department and says, we don't know anything about it, but you should call the South Williamsport Police Department. Not talk to Agent Stolzfus, who is the Williamsport Area School District police officer at the high school. What do they call that? The school
Resource officer.
Okay. Not Stolzfus. He doesn't send him to Stolzfus. He sends him to the South Williamsport Police Department. I don't even know how to begin to get my head around the reason why Sergeant Reader would ever involve the South Williamsport Police Department when they have you might as well be calling the Kenosha, Wisconsin Police Department 2 years ago. That's how distant and disparate and separated they are from this case. Why would Reader do that? Well, I don't know, but I do know now. I do now understand why the detective from Myrtle Beach, when she called the principal at the high school, Principal Pardo, and asked him for help because she was getting the runaround, sending the Myrtle Beach Police Department to South Williamsport Police Department for information on something that happened in Myrtle Beach regarding Williamsport area school district students, is what in the book and in the business we call a runaround.
Right. And here's the thing.
Evidence. You want evidence? This is evidence.
Right. Here's the thing, right? I think.
By the way, evidence that the Williamsport Police Department, in their right to know request answer, which is punishable. What is it? What's the
penalty of perjury?
By penalty of perjury. It's a legal document. The response is a legal document sent to Todd Bartlett, and I quote, "We have no record."
By the way, it went to the wrong address.
This is who you're asking us to trust.
It went to the wrong address. After 50 days, they put the wrong address on it, Rob.
You're burying the lead.
So
you're burying the lead. You're asking us to trust an institution that's lying to us, whose sole duty is to adjudicate the truth.
Now, let me say, I think both of you know one of the most angry position that I end up discussing with people all of the time. When we see evidence like this, whether it be in this story or national stories, there's always this debate. Let me give you an example that people nationally and that listening in Pennsylvania and Williamsport will understand. When we look at the disastrous policies of Tom Wolf and Secretary Levine of sending COVID-positive patients into nursing homes, which they knew were the most vulnerable populations, thereby leading to thousands of deaths, the excuse we were given by people defending them is, it was just a mistake. I'm sick and tired of this excuse of when we see something so heinous, like in this particular story with these officers that you're talking about, that we're told, the excuse from people defending them will be like, well, perhaps not the best judgment at a time, but an honest mistake.
It's not an excuse, it's a narrative.
Right. How many times must we say, first off, if that's your defense, why would you be supporting these officers, or this officer particularly, maintaining his job? Would you not say, if this is a mistake so grotesque that led to justice delayed for a sexual assault victim, that even if it was due to just, he thought that when he was directing the investigating officer in Myrtle Beach, instead of directing him to the people that actually investigated the case and had knowledge of it, he directed them to people he knew had no knowledge of the case, but it was just a whoopsie, then he needs to be gone anyways. But it's clear that this is being used over and over by people in bad faith to justify corrupt behavior. If it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. How many times must we see? and don't look at this in a vacuum. Like, Todd, let me put it this way. If this was the only thing about this story, but while this was occurring, all the mandated reporters reported it and there was legitimate investigations going, that would be one thing. But it's not. It's this compounding effort every single step of the way. It's people doing the wrong thing, people doing everything they could to cover up this story. And every time when they're confronted on it, the supporters of them say, oh, no, it was just a misunderstanding. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. But it's not one situation. It's every single time. And it's not a flippant issue. We're not talking about, a couple $1,000s misplaced in the school athletic fund. We're talking about children being sexually assaulted. You can't think of a more heinous crime. And so for this narrative to be put forth that we're supposed to continue to have trust in institutions that do things like willfully, or even if just out of ignorance, since I can't prove it, it's not my job to prove it, but whether it be out of sheer incompetence or willful corruption, misdirected the actual good investigators trying to receive justice for these children. The fact that we're told that we have to trust them and believe them currently, who could feel safe about their children in Williamsport today, seeing the behaviors of the people that were tasked with being mandated reporters and the police that buried this story and did not receive justice for actual sexual assault victims?
Yeah.
I don't want to let the cat out of the bag of what my legal strategy is going to be with the Office of Open Records, but at least
It doesn't matter. They're not strong enough to be able to counter it, even if you laid it out for them. It's like the Washington Redskins of 1993, okay, in that offensive line. You know what? We're gonna go off tackle on this play, off tackle right, and you know what? The only thing you don't know is the count, but we're going to execute so perfectly that even if you know what the play is, you're not going to be able to stop us. You could tell them exactly what you're going to do, and they don't have the capacity to be able to defend and stand up and do the right thing, because they don't understand what the right to know and sunshine laws really mean.
No records exist is the answer from the police chief of the city of Williamsport.
Exactly.
Okay? No records exist. Do you know what Exhibit A of my appeal is going to be? Part 20. Part 20. I feel real confident about my chances with the Open Records Office and getting those records. Real confident.
Yep.
They didn't even cite the fact there's an ongoing investigation. That I could have tolerated. There's an exemption in the right to know law. They didn't even say that. No records exist.
Let me circle back to what you said, and then we could move on, Rob. So what the right to know requests, responses, not you making it up, these are the responses from these bozos, is that there's testimony from the Williamsport Police Department in the testimony or the comments made by Dustin Reeder that say that Stolfus in September didn't know about the case that he was involved in June as part of the investigation about the same issue, the same case. Is that correct, or am I, or do you want to clean that up a little bit?
Yeah, mid-May.
That's the question that you're asking, right?
Yeah,
how can a man who was involved in an investigation in June and that investigation closed come back and say in October that he didn't know about the incident that he was part of an investigation of? Is that correct?
Right, unless Lepley, Weber, and Pardo and the gang put him into Marty McFly's DeLorean and transported him back in time to be in the room in the investigation, which we all know is not true.
How many gigawatts does that require?
1.21 gigawatts.
It's beyond comedy now, right? This is not even good comedy.
And the district writes the statement that says that he was involved, that the resource officers were involved.
So using the exact statements from the district, you've been able to piece together through right to know requests that they were basically lying. Not basically, they were lying.
Yes.
Why should we pay taxes to them? Hello? mean, could you guys hear me? Why should we pay taxes to them?
I'm sorry. I was channeling my inner Steve Keener silence. I'm sorry.
Well, hey, you got to pay taxes for schools that won't open. You got to pay taxes to fund universities teaching children to be Marxist and trying to burn down this country. So you might as well pay taxes to fund police officers and school board members that will cover up sexual assault allegations, right? Isn't that what our entire system is? The very first thing, the agreement we have in government is we give up some of our rights and some of our property in the form of taxation because we've collectively agreed there's some things that the government should have the right to do. One of the best things humanity decided was the monopoly of force should be on the government. So in other words, when it comes to enforcing laws, things like that, we have the government do that. If the government is unwilling to do that, it's unwilling to keep us safe, whether it be from roving bands of Biden supporters burning down cities, or it be in the form of the government that are covering up the most heinous of abuses, child sexual assault. Why should we trust the government? What good are they if they can't maintain the very base function that should be the prerequisite to all other functions of the government existing? So I totally agree. If you're in Williamsport, why are you paying taxes to when your local government,
the school district, right,
is actually covering up sexual assault allegations on children?
Where's the benefit to us? I don't see the benefit. I'm all ears. I'm pro-government. Okay, I understand that we need government. I'm pro-police, but I'm pro-police because I need you to keep the moral higher ground, right? Please keep the moral higher ground. And when you don't do so, I'm going to call you out on it. You know, I'm not one of those type of police supporters that looks the other way to bad behavior. And and one of the things that I thought about a lot in the last 30 days is that the price that we're paying is not because of the death of Floyd. It's not. The price that we're paying is for the horrible behavior of the police in this country to justified shootings on white people and deaths on their watch. That's the price we're paying. Because now when you go and look back at those cases, and you know the Timpa case, right, Mike, Robert?
Mm-hmm.
That's a horrible case. That's a horrible case.
Right.
And there's hundreds, if not thousands, of other cases of justified shootings that really weren't. That's the price that we're paying. The reason why all these cities are getting burnt down is because not because of Floyd, but because of all the justified the lack of justice in so many other cases.
I totally disagree with you.
Have nothing to do.
I completely disagree with you. I think that those
karmically. I'm not saying karmically.
But that's not why these people are doing it. Like, for example,
I understand, but I these are my thoughts.
Right.
It's just my thoughts that I could understand how karma's getting to come back and bite the police in the ass and defunding and all these things, because the people that we thought were in charge, that we thought were responsible, that we thought were had their hand on the wheels, didn't.
I just think it's a dangerous.
Listen, I understand that these people who are transvestites that read to kids in kindergarten, they're not doing that to read kids. They're doing that to be able to change the status quo. I understand that.
I mean, I don't.
There's a strategy to it.
I don't want to talk about the karma of it because I feel that the left clips your segment there and goes, "See, we deserve this." No, totally wrong. This is not karmic justice.
Yeah, I know. If they want to come on and defend it, let's go.
Yeah, I know, but it's not karmic justice even in that sense. Yes, we as a nation, there was a movement to try to hold police accountable even before the Trayvon Martin incident and Black Lives Matter. In fact, I largely, many times online and blogs I was in, talked about the need to reform police. We see Republicans such as Rand Paul, which is the story we should talk about, leaving the convention, leaving the speech of Trump's, was assaulted again. Now here's a man, Rand Paul, who was shot at at the Republican ball field in an attempted murder. Then, for political reasons, his neighbor attacked him, forcing him to remove part of his lung. Now he and his wife are assaulted by a mob while police officers were attacked trying to protect him, leaving a political speech. And all the while they're shouting, "Say her name, say her name." Did you know that there was a bill in the Senate called the Justice for Breonna Taylor bill, and it was to end no-knock warrants? You know who created that bill? That was Rand Paul. Right?
Cool, right?
And so this is what I'm talking about.
So they were trying to force him to say her name and to say Brianna's name?
Yeah, that's what they were yelling as they mobbed him. Say her name. They have no clue. He actually
that's awesome.
Yeah, he
That's
actually
just
was
awesome.
the single person most responsible in government for doing real world solutions to make sure that another Breonna Taylor situation doesn't happen. He named the damn bill Justice for Breonna Taylor. And yet they're mobbing him and threatening violence, saying they're going to kill him and his wife because he won't say her name. He did more than say her name. He instituted policy. So these sorts of actions have been occurring. Yes, Here's the truth. This is the sad truth for everyone out there. There will always be bad cops. And it's worth talking about because we should hold to account those who are charged.
We're doing it now.
Right. And so the idea, like, yes, should we have had more effort on the deaths of places like Tony Timpa? Yes. Or Daniel Shaver or any unjustified police shooting? Heck, I go further than that. I think that civil forfeiture asset laws are terrible and we need to get back to community policing. But the idea that somehow, I should have done, Rob, you should have done better. You should have been calling out the police more, even though I was. Rand Paul should have been calling them out more, even though he was. Well, it's karma now that your cities are burning because you didn't. No, it's not karma. What it is communist, Marxist revolutionaries backed by corporate globalist interests that want to destroy working class Americans of all color, using fear and intimidation for their political power. That's called terrorism. That's what's going on right now. I challenge anyone watching here right now, all my left-wing friends, there's this sort of magnanimous response that people on the left want to say. When you point out the heinous actions and intimidation and cancel culture you see, they'll say, well, both sides do it. Now, I understand that sounds flowery, and God knows we on here criticize Republicans and the right all the time. Even though we're from the right, and clearly we have a bias, we defend the right more often than not, but we'll call them out. But it is a mistake and a lie to say that this happens in equal proportions on both sides. Yes, there can be outliers, but I've asked my friends, show me, if you're listening to this and you're on the left, show me one example of a Democratic convention or a Democratic speaker where you saw Trump or Republicans outside assaulting the people leaving that event. Show me one. Show me one time where you've seen Trump or Republican supporters trying to bar people from access to hear a Democratic speaker. One. Show me just one. I could show you hundreds, or at least dozens upon dozens of the opposite, of right-wing speakers being attacked, of right-wing supporters being barred by left-wing agitators from seeing them, of mobs surrounding people that were trying to enter or leave right-wing speakers. And the fact where we can have a senator of the United States who was not only shot at by a Bernie Sanders supporter believing in this extreme left-wing rhetoric, but then was attacked by a neighbor, apparently for political reasons because of his policies, to see him be attacked in the manner he was, and to have our media outlets and our Democrats claim that Rand Paul is whining is one of the most revolting, disgusting, revealing things that you will ever see. This is Joe Biden's America. This is the Democrats' America. They love the riots. They love they love the physical intimidation. When it's directed at them, they'll scream and shout. CNN goes off the deep end anytime they go to a Trump rally and someone flips them the bird and says, you're the enemy of the people. Yet they defend violent mobs surrounding people like Rand Paul, who's already been twice viciously attacked and attempted murdered. They defend that as free speech. If this happened to Barack Obama when he was senator, if a bunch of Tea Party people would have surrounded him, shoved police around him, threatened to kill him, do you think that they would say, oh, Obama's a whiner? At the same time, this is going on. Michelle Obama's penning an article that says white people in this country are racist towards blacks and they all ignore blacks because I suffered the indignity of waiting in line for ice cream once and someone cut in line. This is who the left is. They think that's an indignity. Oh my God, that happened to Michelle Obama. That's terrible. But Rand Paul being attacked and mobbed with his wife and their friends, that's totally legitimate. If you can't tell, it infuriates me beyond belief. And this incident needs to be talked about.
I think Americans eat too much ice cream.
I think that we need to wake up. This is not a glitch in the system of the Democratic Party. This is the Democratic Party. Do you remember when Maxine Waters said, chase them into restaurants, chase them in public, don't allow them to feel comfortable? Or when Ayanna Pressley said the other day, we need the unrest in the streets to continue and to grow stronger. Or when Nancy Pelosi said, the Republicans are domestic enemies and enemies of the people. Or when they said that ICE agents and cops were like Nazis running concentration camps. Or when they said that all Trump supporters are racist. I'm looking right now. I'm looking at what's this poll? This is Rasmussen. 32% of people in this country polled. 32% believe that Donald Trump said Nazis are good people. 32%. It couldn't be further from the truth. Anderson Cooper and Joe Biden repeated this lie this week. When you tell people our opponents are Nazis and you need to use violence to fight Nazis, is there any surprise that they feel totally justified using violence? It's despicable. Todd, do you think when you see situations like what happened to the people leaving Trump's speech and the other violence that we see being directed, do you think that we honestly should have a conversation about how the Democrats and media are culpable for gaslighting this by the statements they made, like I just said?
Yeah, a friend of the show, Dan Bongino, posted video that his wife took when they were walking back to the hotel, and they were being followed by people on bikes that were wearing masks, and they were saying just unkind things. And just, if Dan were back in his Secret Service days, right, with people making those veiled type of threatening statements to him and his family and everything else, I can't even imagine what would happen to some of these knuckleheads. Because, and he said it, he goes, you feel like you're alone. You feel like it's one on the world. And they're just cowards, the people that are doing this. It's no different than somebody firebombing my car. You want to have a conversation? Let's have a conversation, okay, about a disagreement. But to do what they're doing nationally and then destroy property and potentially put lives in danger, it's the wrong way to go, folks. I just hope it was worth it, because when you're spending the next 5 to 10 in the Gray Bar Motel, I really hope it was worth it for you.
So why don't you guys hit me with a couple of things that happened this week so I could comment on them?
All right. Sure. There's plenty to talk about.
So where do you want to start?
Let's start with Kenosha. Why not? Right. So for those that don't know, in Kenosha, Wisconsin, a man by the name of Jacob Blake, there was a call that went out. He was shot 4 times in the back, 7 shots fired by police as he tried to get into a car. This has led to widespread riots almost immediately. It led to, NBA teams canceling games, all sorts of things. So that we could talk about that situation specifically. But the bigger story, I feel, is that what happened was these riots occurred. The Wisconsin governor refused to accept National Guard aid. They refused to have the police do their job and stop the riots. There's footage out there of business owners with tears in their eyes, including immigrant business owners of color, saying, what have we done to deserve this? We supported Black Lives Matter. Why are you burning down our community? And so as a result, people used a show of force that they armed themselves legally, and they said, stay off of they tried to open carry to deter violence from occurring. A gentleman by the name of Kyle Rittenhouse was one of the people there. He was being chased. He fired his gun and then was being chased again. He ended up shooting 3 people and killing 2. He's been arrested for first-degree murder. The left has gone insane and said, oh, this proves that he's this violent murdering thug. Oh, my God, this is horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And what this is, and this is my question to you, Carlos. One, we could get into Rittenhouse specifically and whether or not we believe that he's a murderer, this was self-defense. But a question that's above and beyond that, that lays the groundwork for this conversation. Do you think that as the Democrats and the media that have gaslit a situation, that have encouraged, NPR just interviewed someone today that wrote a book called The Importance of Looting and Rioting. That's who NPR is endorsing right now. That's the message they're promoting. Do you think that in that world, that vigilante...
Okay to loot. It's okay to loot and riot?
Right. That's what right. Do you think that in this world of promotion of these types of tactics, that vigilantism and conflicts between disparate groups, both justified and unjustified, are inevitably going to occur?
Well, there's no question about it. What what a lot of people don't understand is that the conversations that the left wants to have is to be able to adjudicate not your right to carry a weapon, but do you have the moral standing to defend yourself? And from what I understand, and you got to understand that I've been deluged with a lot of people sending me stuff, and I haven't looked at it because I want to be able to keep a clear mind for what we talk about on Saturdays. The problem they have with Rittenhouse is not his right to carry, but his moral right to have a gun and use it. See, they want to be able to adjudicate you, not your right to carry. See, Rittenhouse, is that his name? Rittenhouse?
Yeah,
Rittenhouse?
Kyle Rittenhouse, yeah.
Okay. I think one of the things they were saying is that he was underage.
Yes, 17.
And that he was a white supremacist.
No evidence for it, but yes, that's one of the things they've been saying.
It has nothing to do with carrying and defending himself. It has to do with the moral high ground that they want to take away from people who are defending themselves. So that way they can win the narrative.
Well, and that's certainly true. And
I think that there's more bullets that exist in America than there are people who believe in that idea.
Okay, and that's certainly true, and that's where we should go with this. But I just want to real quick make this point. Just like everyone with any shred of common sense knew, if you put COVID patients into nursing homes, many people will die, yet that's what our experts did.
Really?
In the same token, I just want to be clear on this. If you justify, ignore, or deflect for violent riots, you are intentionally creating the situation where people will die. Period. Yeah. There will be people that will fight back. There will be people that won't fight back and that will be killed. There will be justified people defending themselves that are forced to kill people. There will be unjustified people. It doesn't matter. And I contend once more, Todd, that the reason that because this is so predictable, there is no way that the Democrats and the media are this dumb that they're like, oh, we couldn't foresee the consequences of cheering on riots. We couldn't foresee that people would be hurt. And so the only logical explanation is they want these riots to occur. They are hoping and praying that they could find a character that matches, a white supremacist that, shot people, shot peaceful protesters. They want that moment so much, just like they want COVID deaths, because then they could say, see, look, that proves our case. And no matter what happens, even if that happens, and it could, I don't think Rittenhouse was that, but even if it happens, it is not the right's fault. It is the left's fault that intentionally stacked the dominoes to the best of their ability to make sure that that sort of violent conflagration would happen. What do you think, Todd?
So seeing the video after the shots ran out that he's claiming for self-defense, his hands are up, the rifle's at his side, and he's walking back toward armored up police vehicles that are rolling down the street that have sat at the end of the street. Right? I'm sure you've seen this video, right, Rob?
Mm-hmm.
He's walking toward them. The police are telling the guy to get out of the street.
Yeah.
He's trying to give himself up. They drove right past him.
Right. And so just to clarify, just to go through the incidents, I want to give, this is kind of a complicated take, but let me explain this. I am someone who didn't rush to judgment.
So tell me what happened.
Sure. Okay. So here's what we see.
I mean, I know what happened and what ended up happening, but what precipitated Rittenhouse shooting these people?
Here's what we know now, despite the narrative that you hear from the left. What we know is he did not cross state lines to engage in something. He lived 20 minutes away. Now, I know Todd and Carlos, you all know this. In rural Pennsylvania, oftentimes the only town is 20 minutes away. That's the case with me. So the idea that this is somehow like they're spinning it like he traveled, 500 miles to participate in that. Even if it was the case, who cares? But that's not what happened.
Like Antifa?
Right. Exactly. They don't care when the rioters do that. But anyways, turns out he was working it as a lifeguard. Then he volunteered his time afterwards to clean up graffiti. He was on record saying that he wanted to use his training as a lifeguard to help people that were hurt in the course of these riots, including rioters. So he was on video discussing that. He said that the reason that he came was to protect a friend of his whose car dealership was being totally destroyed. And so that he came, was protecting it. Now, what we see of video was there was sort of some antagonistic comments from some the first guy that he shot with the red shirt in his hat, yelling, "Go ahead, shoot me, N-word," and was yelling things like that. He seemed to be very unstable. Then there is
he black?
No, he was white. All three of the people that were shot
were white. He was being called the N-word?
He was calling the other guy the N-word. I don't know why. It's okay, though, if you're on the left. You could do that. So anyways, then what occurs is we don't know what's happening, but the footage we see then is Rittenhouse is being chased by this person. The New York Times, hardly a right-wing outlet, their visual team took every video they could find and definitively showed, and you could find this online, that imagine this. Rittenhouse is running away, right? He's running, and he's being chased. Now, the first thing you need to know is he's leaving the scene, right? If he was actively there to shoot people, why run? You would stand there and get punched so that you felt you were justified to use your weapon. Why are you trying to flee if you're there to murder people? So he's doing the right thing and trying to de-escalate the situation by fleeing. I don't know why he was fleeing. There's a chance, who knows? But he was fleeing in that specific incident. As it's occurring and someone's getting closer and closer to him, he hears a gunshot. Someone else fired first, coming from the same direction of the man chasing him. Now put yourself in that position. A mob that you've witnessed for 3 days attack people unconscious, burn down buildings, scream that they want to kill people, chasing you, and you hear a gunshot turn and the man's right on you trying to grab your gun. What would you do? And so he fired.
Shoot them in the head with a bazooka.
Right, and so he shot them. Then he didn't leave. He immediately gets on the phone and starts calling someone and seems to be concerned for the shooting that just occurred. Then the footage shows that people start screaming, "There he is, get him," and they start chasing him. The mob chases him. You could hear about 4 other gunshots that are occurring during this time that aren't from Rittenhouse. As they chase him, he trips and falls. When he trips and falls, the first person comes at him and is about to hit him with the skateboard. He stops. Rittenhouse points the gun at him. He stops. Second person draws a gun on Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse sees it, turns, shoots him in the arm.
Draws a gun on Rittenhouse?
Yes. He drew a gun on Rittenhouse.
A rioter drew a gun on Rittenhouse?
Yes.
What?
That's exactly what happened. So Rittenhouse shoots him in the arm, and it's very graphic, but he blows his arm off. He then turns to the guy with the skateboard who's now rushing him again, and he shoots him in the stomach and kills him. So the guy that got shot in the arm, I apparently lost
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
So then what Todd's talking about is immediately preceding that, the mob backs off, right? And Rittenhouse walks up to the police, who sat there and watched the incident, mind you.
Right.
Because they were ordered to do so by the left-leaning leadership that said, just let the city burn. He walked to the police and told them, like, look, I was just involved in a shooting. They said, go away, and went to render aid to the people that were shot. That's what the police did. Now, we're being told that this makes Kyle Rittenhouse, he's being charged with first-degree murder. So I just want to be clear. Again, all of these arguments that come from Black Lives Matter and the people pushing this critical race theory garbage is that...
Should we be sending money so he can be bailed out? Like the Democrats do for the protesters?
I think so, and you're starting to see some of that. Nicholas Sandman's lawyer is actually representing him pro bono, so he's got probably one of the best legal. Yeah, he has.
Nick Sandman's lawyer is playing with house money, bro.
Right.
Nick Sandman's lawyer is playing with house money, Rob Carlos. House money.
Yep.
House money.
I love it.
Now, let me say real quick to the people.
By the way, this same Nick Sandman that addressed the RNC convention this week, right,
was
Rob?
Awesome. Did a great job.
Okay.
But
Put
just
the hat on at the end.
Yeah, the MAGA hat. Let me just say, though, I don't know. The problem, even when you see these videos, the same's true in the case of George Floyd. Do I still believe that Derek Chauvin was unjust and should be criminally charged for something for what he did to George Floyd, applying pressure to his neck like that for over 7 minutes? Absolutely. I don't think it was first-degree murder because we're now starting to see, well, obviously there was no premeditation that was proven, and we're starting to see that he probably likely was having a heart attack before that, but that doesn't justify what Chauvin did. However, we saw in the George Floyd situation, like we see over and over and over and over, including the Jacob Blake situation, that oftentimes the small snippet of video we get doesn't tell the whole story. So let me throw an olive branch out to my friends on the left. I don't know why the initial chase was happening, right? I don't know. And so someone might be able to provide evidence that, well, actually the initial chase was occurring because Rittenhouse did something heinous. But I see no evidence of that. And you would think that with the mainstream media trying to portray Rittenhouse as this evil white supremacist, if that video existed, they would be paying big time bucks to get that video so that they could prove that he's somehow some horrible person. But the footage that we see seems to be a clear-cut case of self-defense. The fact that he was charged by politically biased attorneys and prosecutors in order to try to appease the mob with first-degree murder is truly heinous. That's our law enforcement today. They are everything they accuse you of. They talk about the bias of law enforcement, then they actively encourage the bias of law enforcement by overcharging people to appease the mob. Law enforcement is being instructed to not keep you safe, they're being instructed to go out. If you're a business owner and you want to open your business, they'll lock you up. If you go on a beach without a mask, they'll lock you up. But if you want to burn down the business, if you want to beat people that are store owners, then the police are instructed to let you go. It is truly Orwellian. It's straight out of the book 1984, where love or peace is war, right? The truth is a lie. The criminals are now the just, and the just are now the criminals. So let's, real quick, I know I'm rambling here, but let's look at what the left's telling you. You don't have the right to arm yourself and protect yourself, and you don't have the right to have the police protect you. So your rights, according to them, and I saw people on the left saying this, you know what they say Rittenhouse should have done? Accepted his beating and prayed the mob didn't kill him.
Yeah, no.
That's what they think.
Empty the clip and then see what happens then. Like the Israelis. I'm sending my F-15s. I'm peppering the ground that you live on. And then when they come back and land on our airstrips, then we'll go to the negotiating table, because now that you've paid a consequence, a horrible consequence, you're going to be very nice and tender and sweet and attentive at the negotiating table. Right. That's what we're going to do. That's what I'm going to do.
So now briefly, let me talk about Jacob Blake, which is the situation that led to this. The footage does
in Kenosha.
Right.
That's the incident that started the whole thing.
This precipitated, and what it was.
And by the way, the charging.
What's his name again? Jacob what?
Blake.
Okay.
I think
the charging in Rittenhouse, by the way, did not stop the rioting.
No. You know what stopped it? You know why the riotings decreased substantially in Kenosha the past couple nights? You want to know what it was? Trump sent the National Guard in.
Yeah.
So again, we saw.
Makes sense.
Remember, the night before Rittenhouse defended himself and shot and killed 2 people and a third person maimed. That could have been stopped. The governor of Wisconsin said, "No, I don't want it to stop. I don't want to accept the National Guard." Why would he?
So many
if
great
he was
examples
right,
in Portland and Minneapolis.
right? If the governor
Seattle.
of Wisconsin was right that accepting the National Guard would make the situation worse, then why did he accept it the next day? Oh, you want to know why? Don Lemon told you why this week. Did you catch this, Todd? Don Lemon started to talk about it's time for Biden to denounce these riots. And why did he say it? He slipped up. He let you know. Did he say because riots are horrible and people are being hurt and business owners of all colors are losing their businesses and over 32 people have died in the course of these riots? Is that why he said? He said
Because
no. The polling numbers are in.
Of course.
What the Democrats are telling you is we were totally for the riots. We were totally for the maiming and killing of people.
Until it's hurting us.
Until, as long as we could blame it on Trump, we were for it. Now that it looks like it's being blamed on us, now we don't like it and we feel obligated to just pay lip service. You think they're really against the riots because they're coming out now and saying so? It's a joke. And so that's...
So how long, why did it take so long to have this polling? I mean, I could have told you that back in, 5 days after what happened to Floyd.
Right.
I could have told you
Carlos,
this.
the issue is it might be the same. It might be the same people that the Williamsport Area School District consults when they're answering rights and no request, asking for 30 days and then an extra 20 days. The same thing for the Williamsport Bureau of Police. Rob, back to you.
We can't find it, Todd. We can't find it.
So
Jacob doesn't exist.
Jacob Blake. Now, this incident is the new George Floyd. So much so that the NBA is canceling playoff games. NFL teams are putting his Drew Brees, formerly a Patriot, now been shamed so much to putting alleged rapist name on his helmet. All of these sports institutions canceling games, canceling practices, doing things like that. Mass criticism from people all over the country and the Democrats, the media, etc. This to them is an open shut case. Here's what we were first reported, that an unarmed man who was doing nothing wrong was accosted by police. He tried to flee and was shot 4 times in the back. The media over and over put chyons up and put comments that said he was unarmed.
He tried to flee. What do you mean? I don't understand.
So he was shot in the back. So he was leaving the police. So the narrative is he did nothing wrong and was just trying to get away from the racist cops, and they shot him in the back for it. That's the narrative.
So, but all right, and just because I don't know what you're talking about, so when you say leaving the police, that's code for resisting arrest.
Well, I'm telling you their narrative. That's what I'm telling you.
Okay.
This was the narrative. So he was innocent. He did nothing wrong. He was just trying to leave racist cops. They shot him in the back for it. That's what was told. We were told he was unarmed. This was reported uncritically as an absolute truth by media all over this country. Now, Todd, we just talked about the importance of when you see a snippet of video to understand that more evidence can come to light. What do you think is the professionalism or lack thereof for so many media outlets to assert that he was unarmed, which we now know wasn't true? As a journalist, what would you do if you're reporting this story? Would you say that he was unarmed, or would you wait for evidence to prove that before reporting that fact?
Well, and Rob, you bring up a great point. Here's the issue. Everybody's trying to be first with this, trying to be first, regardless of the facts, right? And if the news director says, well, he was unarmed, because it fits the narrative, that's a whole nother issue to deal with in these types of stories.
Now,
so who was first in reporting the Floyd story?
Probably local news, but I mean,
who cares?
Yeah, right. Look,
who cares?
Yeah,
that's my point.
You know,
who
Minneapolis
cares?
Is,
What
right.
people care about is being the media outlet who reported it most accurately.
Okay, so yeah, and that's absolutely right.
CC to the Williamsport Sun Gazette.
Okay, so anyways, Jacob, he didn't die. Blake didn't die. He
got shot 4 times in the back and he didn't die.
Right. So apparently he's paralyzed. He's in the hospital. So he's being canonized just like George Floyd was as this great person that now we know more to the story. This still isn't all. Let me be clear here. I'm not claiming to have all the facts of the story. I'm just saying that you know that more facts are going to come up. So
and
now
when did this happen again? What day did this happen?
5 days ago. I don't know, 4 or 5 days ago.
So
now
we still really don't know anything. Right? Is that what
we know more, right? So here's what we know now. The initial claim that he didn't have the police called on him was a lie. And I'll get to what was called on for. The claim that he was unarmed is a lie. Now, I'd seen photos that seemed to show him holding a knife, but certainly at least the knife was in the car. The claim that he wasn't resisting was a lie. Apparently, he had an officer in a headlock, according to the police. We'll see. That could not be true. And that he was tased and was able to overcome that tasing. So the police tried to use less than lethal force to quell him, and that was ineffective. We know now that he was getting in a car with 2 children in him, who the mother of the children was the one who called the police on him. We know that there was a knife in that car, but he was getting in with those children. And so now, I'm not saying that this means that the police acted justly. I don't know. But it seems to speak that this is a clear cut, it's becoming more clear cut, that it's not as clear cut as it seemed. That's not good wording, but you see what I mean, that it's not an open and shut case like previously said. What are you supposed to do? Now, let me tell you why the police were called on Jacob Blake. Because his former girlfriend or current girlfriend, I don't know which one, but someone he was in a relationship with called. Because here's what happened. He came at 6 a.m. and demanded his stuff. She lay in bed with her child, her young kid. He came in, and I'm not going to get too graphic for our show, but he graphically sexually assaulted her. And I don't mean just like
assaulted the
woman who called
child?
the woman who called the police while she was in bed with her child. And I don't mean like heinous things like caressing breast or something like that. I mean there was actually penetration involved. Graphic sexual assault. The police in the report said the woman was bawling while she called them and said she felt humiliated and physically hurt by this. That's why they called the police on Jacob Blake. Now imagine that
Jacob Blake raped this woman because he wanted his stuff at 6 o'clock in the morning.
She said he did this.
Same bed with her child.
Right. So, and she said that he did this all the time. That he would come in drunk and rape her. Right. So he did this in the bed with the child. Now, having known that, you're the cops that get this call. You know that he's allegedly armed. You see him fighting with police. You attempt to tase him. That doesn't stop him. You think that he's holding a knife or has a knife in the car. You've heard that he's armed. He gets in the car with children while fleeing you, where he just raped a girl in bed with a child. And he's getting in the vehicle with children. What are the cops supposed to do? Let him get in with the children and drive away? Now, I'm not saying that what they did was the perfect answer. I don't know. But this is being used by the left as open and shut, proves systemic racism. It's not that simple. I'm not an LEO. I never have been. I know LEOs. I have some in my family. They talk about the difficulty of these situations all the time. The truth is, life is complicated. It's not just black and white. There are areas of gray all the time. If sometimes an officer may make a mistake, and they should be held accountable for that mistake, but that doesn't prove systemic racism or anything like that, and we have no evidence that this was an unjustified shoot in the first place. But I'm just trying to say, I'm willing to see more evidence, I am. But for so many people on the left to say this is open and shut, Jacob Blake's a hero, the cops are all vicious racists for doing him, that's not what occurred. What would the inner city community, these black leaders like Al Sharpton have said if the cops said, yeah, we're just going to sit back and watch him get in the car with those kids? What if he then slits their throat? What if he kidnaps them and the mother never sees those kids again? Then Al Sharpton will be saying, look how callous the police are. They didn't even try to stop a man as they saw that he was getting in a car to kidnap these children. It's a lose-lose situation for the police. The man, and look, here's the thing. Situations like this, just like the riots and the deaths from them, are going to be inevitable. That's being pushed by the left. The narrative of the left pushing this idea that cops and law enforcement is all systemic racist, you know what it's going to lead to? More people in the inner city black community being in violent reactions with the police. They are literally creating these situations that lead to violence and then standing on their moral high horse saying, oh, this violence is wrong. You created the scenario that allowed the violence to occur. And so again,
so don't come crying to us.
Right. And so now
play stupid games, win stupid prizes, eat the consequences. I really don't care. Eat the consequences.
So, I mean, to me,
so if you get shot because you're resisting, keep resisting. We have more bullets than we have stupid people.
So, Todd, let me ask you this. The fact that the media has gone all in on a narrative that Rittenhouse is a violent murderer, and how dare people say he had a right to defend himself. Anyone who speaks to that and the importance of defending yourself is a violent, vitriolic person that's encouraging violence. But Jacob Blake was a great, outstanding person who, you know, it was obviously racism and police brutality that killed him. What do you think that shows about the journalistic integrity of these companies, these media outlets, that the fact that they're willing to be so biased in their reporting of this?
Well, it's gone because they want to be part of the cool kids club. They want to, you know, run and do the narrative. And what is really sad is you mentioned it earlier. It drives the narrative of Trump bad, Trump bad. I mean, I got to tell you, you have to let the facts play out, and where the facts take the story is what you're supposed to be reporting on, not narratives and not agendas.
Right.
The agenda and the narrative should be truth, right?
Yep. And
especially in cases like this.
Now, we didn't talk about it much, but the RNC was worlds better than the DNC in two ways. One, obviously, as a Republican, I just thought the messaging was better, but we'll talk about that in a second. But Carlos, I know you didn't watch any of it. Todd, if you could try,
tell me what your highlights. Tell me what you want me to comment on and what you thought the highlights were.
Okay, well, just real quick, I'll ask Todd. Todd, you did watch some of it, correct?
Yeah.
So just purely objectively, not saying the message or anything like that, was not the production value of the RNC world superior to the DNC?
Yes.
I mean, and I think that matters.
That's because the Hollywood producers are mad that they're not working, so they're making the DNC pay, a horrible price.
So, yeah, I mean, that messaging matters. So I think anyone that's reasonably objective would say, yes, the RNC was a far better success as a vehicle to get their message out there than the DNC. Carlos, I thought the highlights, like if I could pick out some, Nick Sandman, I thought was a high point. There were so many great speakers. But in general, this is what I'll ask you because we don't have a lot of time left.
So who had the best message?
Who had the best message? The gentleman, I think, that talked about fleeing Cuba and fleeing communism and how he's...
Was he an immigrant?
Yes.
Obviously?
That was great. David Dorn, the black security officer and former cop that was shot and murdered by looters, his wife's message was incredibly powerful. But here's what I want to comment or ask you about specifically, Carlos.
Interesting.
You'll have to take my word for this, but one of the things that the left was criticizing the RNC for was it didn't have a lot of star power. What do you think's more persuasive to the American people? The fact that the Democrats had a bunch of celebrities and wealthy elitists giving their message at the DNC, or the actual regular hardworking people were the primary focus of the RNC and who spoke?
Do you understand who the market for our show is?
I do, yeah.
It's not Hollywood celebrities. It's regular people. So I would answer to you that regular people being exactly who they are is what's most persuasive. The reason why I respect your opinion on so many things, it's not because of that great processor that you have. It's not because you make those great arguments, which you do. And some of those arguments I am in awe of. It's Rob Norris says all the time, I am running for office, or I ran for Congress because I wanted to give a voice to the regular people. There are more regular people out there than there are Jane Fonda lookalikes or actual Jane Fondas.
Thank goodness.
Okay. And the authenticity of your message and the way that you come across will always be more important. And that is why the left, in trying to fight us, wants to separate us by flags. You know, the pride flag and the Black Lives Matters flag and this flag and the Antifa flag, any flag other than a flag that unites us all. So, who cares what the left says?
Well, Todd, let me ask you this. What does it say, though, about the left and so many of these people in the media and in the Democratic Party about their finger on the pulse of a nation, that they actually thought that it was a good strategy to attack Republicans from having normal people speaking at their convention?
I saw something from one of the national networks in the aftermath of President Trump's speech and then the fireworks display, that it was something like watching a monarch or a monarchy and everything else. And I'm sitting there going, are we watching and observing the same thing? Because all we heard for the better part of a week ago was the country torn to shreds and how inadequate we are and how systemically racist we are and how bad we are. And then you go to this past week and it's how many opportunities are available to people, how great the country is. There was a naturalization ceremony, for crying out loud, that the president welcomed 5 new legal immigrants who went through the process to this country. We have so many people trying to get to this systemically racist country. They have to build walls to keep people out.
Mm-hmm.
And
really?
Just some bullet points here for you two real quick. Here's a couple things that I noticed as well. We saw professional members of the media, professional media people, and others in the Democratic Party call Nick Sandmann, a young kid that was attacked by adult homophobic black racist that was smeared, and CNN had to pay out the wazoo in order to settle a case for defaming him, and more people are probably going to pay as well. They called him a snot-nosed kid. We saw that there were people, veterans, who had been paralyzed, serving this great country.
They can't stop talking. He just won a judgment against them for defaming him, and they still can't stop talking.
That's right. Now, how about this from the peaceful, tolerant left? We saw that veterans that were paralyzed in wheelchairs stood for the flag. Think of the strength that it takes to train your body when you're paralyzed like that to stand for the flag. And we actually had someone, I believe a New York Times writer, say that by standing for the flag, that was an inherently racist message for those veterans to do, because it was a repudiation of Colin Kaepernick. How cruel and disgusting of a movement do you have to be to attack a paralyzed person standing for the country they love as racist?
Well, because they're trying to shoehorn Kaepernick into every conversation. And you know, they're awful at this. They're so awful at this.
And let's not forget about LeBron James, reaching out for guidance in the midst of unrest and racial tension and everything else. Who did he reach out to bridge the gap in recent days before shutting down the NBA and the rest of pro sports for a while to protest what happened? Who did he reach out to?
President G.
Barack Obama.
Yep.
Who no longer is the president.
I see.
And they were in contact with
the buds.
CCP.
They're best buds, though.
Yeah. Now, here's another one.
The question is, if you really want to bridge the gap and you really want to reach across the aisle, how about having a conversation with the president? Oh, that's right. You don't like him either.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how about this? Another quick bullet point. I got two more for you. The last one, maybe more of a discussion on the tolerant left that encourages immigration and encourages diversity. How many of them mocked Melania Trump for her accent, including Bette Midler? Hey, Bette, I don't know if you knew this. Melania speaks 5 languages. Now, do you see how the left is everything they project on everyone else?
Oh, you mean in her speech?
Yes. Melania gave a beautiful speech, and she was attacked by people on the left because she has an accent. Right. The same people that say that Trump's xenophobic, the right's xenophobic. Right. As soon as it benefits them, they'll attack someone for their accent. Just like they're all against sexism and attacking women in politics until it was Sarah Palin. And then it was perfectly fine, right? Until it's Kellyanne Conway, then it's perfectly fine. Or if you criticize a black person who's in politics, it must be racism. Unless it's Ben Carson, unless it's chortling and giggling over the death of Herman Cain, then it's okay because they're on the right. And then the last thing, and I would like both your comments on this, which I just find my rage boils beyond belief. Well, real quick, before I get to that, I just want to say, Todd, since you did watch, what do you think of... Could the left be getting talking points better for the Republicans when Trump's big message is we need law and order, we need to stop the burning down of our cities? The first thing that happens when people leave the convention is that they're assaulted by Biden supporters. Like, what
right.
do you, I mean, you see the irony in this, right?
Well, that, and then very soon after,
I believe
that happened.
Democratic primary voters?
Right. Joe Biden supporters. That's who they were.
Right.
it was, I got to get the timing on this right. It was either in and around that same time or the days around that Nancy Pelosi held a press conference.
Yep. And
came out and basically said, there's no reason to have debates with Biden and President Trump. Joe Biden shouldn't lower himself to have a debate with the president. The president doesn't even understand what he's doing, so they shouldn't even have these debates. Joe Biden shouldn't lower himself. And then walked off.
The other thing the Democrats and the media did that's worth talking about is they were incessant about how dangerous it was that during Trump's speech there wasn't appropriate social distancing. There could have been about 1,000 people there.
Oh, shut up.
Okay, no, but here's the point. Here's the point. The day after, what were the numbers that are coming in? Estimated 50,000 people, led by Al Sharpton, were protesting in the very same place in D.C. Not one news outlet. In fact, I saw CNN bring an expert on that said, we want to take precautions with these people out there protesting now, but they're fighting a virus worse than the COVID. They're fighting systemic white supremacy. Racism, yeah. How anyone, let me be as clear as possible, don't believe their lies. These experts and the left are full of it. They don't believe that you need to be locked down. They are locking you down to cause misery. And that's why they support. If they were serious and they thought that gathering in large groups would spread the virus, they would be against these sorts of marches we saw yesterday. At least have the integrity. If you know that you're going to say, well, we know that there's going to be this big Black Lives Matter march, so we'll just stop talking about large group gatherings. But to be so hypocritical that you'll look at a group of 1,000 people and say, oh my God, that's so dangerous. And then look at a group of 50,000 and say, those people are great. That's not dangerous at all. It's unbelievable. This is the caliber of our news and the people that are connected to it.
Well, real quick, Todd, any updates on the latest compendium of incomprehensible explanations and infinite loops of perfunctory drivel from the governor?
So earlier this week, the Department of Health and I believe it's the Latino Connection unveiled CATE, C-A-T-E. It's a mobile
Latino Connection.
Yes, it's a mobile unit that's going to go out and do testing all over the state, 40 different tour stops as they talked about it, and they're hoping to test 10,000 people over the next month and a half.
Okay. And
on a positive note, by the way, the governor did honor the 2019 Lowestoft Minster marching band with a proclamation. Just one more award for that award-winning marching band with the state title last fall. So that was a very nice get for the Lancer Marching Band.
Who Todd has a son that's part of it, which is why we root for them. Even though the governor accidentally heralded them. So tell me more about these wayward Latino things.
So part of the Kate unit is the education and the fear, because there's a perception, whether it's reality or not, that there are certain populations in the Commonwealth that have a fear of getting a COVID test. And what we have found out is, right, COVID negatively impacts minority populations disproportionately to other populations. Well, then you couple, and I did ask this in the press conference of the secretary and of the representatives that were there, of the fear that they speak of that's on the vehicle that they're trying to overcome is that of an illegal immigrant that may be in the Commonwealth illegally, that has a fear of getting a test to being unmasked, no pun intended, and potentially being deported, because they're here illegally. And they said there's no preclusion on the test. One of the interesting ironies, however, is to get this test, you must provide a photo ID. So to get a COVID test in the Kate unit, you must have a photo ID. But in order to vote, you don't. More on that later.
All right, settle down. Before we get to the spending taxpayer money on illegal aliens, did you happen to ask the governor why Latino communities are more susceptible to getting COVID than others?
So the governor wasn't there. It was the Secretary of Health and some other folks that were partners with the Kate vehicle that's going around. But if I may, can I? Or would you like to make that statement?
Well, I'm asking. Did you ask them that question?
Yeah, he wasn't there.
Why do they have more COVID cases in the Latino community than other communities? Do they even know? Do they have any idea?
I got two questions in. Yeah, okay. I got two questions in, but let me postulate a theory from what the data and the information that I've gleaned.
Okay.
And you can speak to this better than I can as a member of that community. And again, folks, understand something. There is nothing wrong with living multi-generational under the same roof. Many communities do that, right?
Italian communities do that. Irish communities do that. Polish communities do that. Yeah. Indian communities. What's happened is Muslim communities do that. Yeah.
Right. So what's happened is some of the situations that have presented themselves is you have multi-generational family members living in a congregate setting. And what my understanding is they're commuting from other areas and then either taking it with them back to that area or more than likely bringing it back. You have an outbreak in that community,
different than regular people?
That's how it happens.
How's that different than regular people?
It's not.
Like, Rob Knorr.
Yeah,
Rob
it's not. Not everybody lives in a single family home.
Rob Knorr comes to Lycoming County and stays at his Latino friend's house and then goes to, a party with 650 people hosted by an Irishman and then drives back home to Clarendon County. How's that different?
It's not.
Okay.
It's not. It's just congregate setting, multi-generational, So my question is the fear that they're talking about, the fear of an illegal immigrant being afraid of coming out of the shadows that potentially would be identified and then deported because they got a test.
Please tell me what you said.
That there's no preclusion on that, and there shouldn't be fear, and we want to make sure we stop the spread. And, that was basically their answer. Now, the other answer that I had asked, the other question that I had asked was of the representative before the secretary stepped to the podium was, what is the greatest fear you're trying to overcome? And the individual said, it's a virus. It has no eyes. It doesn't discriminate, right? And then Secretary Levine stepped up and then pivoted to the fact that the greatest fear is not having a livable minimum wage. And I'm going, how? I didn't ask.
Was she talking to Dustin Reeder?
Yeah, I didn't ask
Call
that
the
question.
South Williamsport Police Department. Let's change the subject completely and utterly and quizzically.
Right. And then I immediately followed up with the illegal immigration question.
They don't know what the hell they're doing. Do they have a special COVID truck for Muslims? Hello?
Well, my guess would be you can convert the truck.
My earpiece might not be working.
Yeah, you can convert the truck to whatever community you want to go into.
Gotcha.
The first one they're going to go to is the Latino community because that's where the apparent greatest concern is right now.
Right. You do realize that these people are racist, right? This is what racism looks like.
Well, and it also took them 5 months to stand it up.
Yeah, no, really. It just, we've been busy.
That's another story for another day.
Final comments, Todd Worley.
So it's been a rather unique couple of weeks. Again, a huge shout out to the first responders who showed up to the car bombing at the house. Without your quick action, that situation could have gone a lot worse. To the neighborhood, thank you for the outpouring of support. To those folks that have reached out in any number of ways with offers, we thank you so much for that. Folks that have brought stuff to the house and, down a vehicle, the transportation with getting kids that are and everything where they need to go. That's been very helpful as well. What's coming up next will be Baseball Story Part 21. That's already in development. Another story is titled Getting Slaughtered. It's a story about the least transparent mayor in the history of the city of Williamsport.
Uh-huh.
And the fifth part of the op-ed series, Jennifer Lake Wokebagon, Part 5 is also well into development. So there are 3 major stories in development for the next 7 to 10 days, I would say. But if breaking news happens, we'll break in first. Yeah. And then the other big thing of the week that I want to share with you guys that you're aware of, the Lycoming County Commissioners with a vote of 3-0 approved my company to once again run the local government and education channel 75 here locally on Comcast. And that'll begin in September. Really looking forward to diving back into that project. There's some guests that we already have lined up for interviews going forward that I'm really looking forward to. There's a very special one that we've already lined up that'll happen most likely after Labor Day is when we'll put it into production that I'm really, really excited about. And then we have some state level guests as well. And then you'll get regular visits with all the local elected officials, real-time information, just a lot of great content, and just really looking forward to it. It's not going to be, this is not going to be Wayne's World TV. I just want everybody to understand that it's not going to be that. This is not going to be your grandpa's or your dad's education or government channel. That's not what we're that's not the modeling we're doing. That's not the production values we're looking at. It potentially can be very special. So really looking forward to it.
When are you going to reach out to your buddy Bongino and get him to come on our show? He's one of my heroes. I'd love to talk to him.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'll reach out to him this week.
I'm sure he's busy.
with all the national media stuff that he's doing right now. And I just want to feel like, hey, man, I kind of knew you went, right? Because he's on a meteoric rise right now. He really is.
He deserves it. He's fantastic.
Final thoughts, Robert Knorr.
So I think that it's worth illustrating. I want people to understand this, that I have friends that are on the left, and I think that if you're an independent thinker, you'll never find another person that completely agrees with all of your positions. And because of that, you'll never find a party that you 100% agree with. So I understand there are people out there that have differing opinions, and I think that diversity of thought is a good thing. I also understand there are people that don't want to vote for the Republican Party or Donald Trump, and I get that as well. But I feel that it's necessary that we say here and now that although I won't judge you morally for it, there is no competent case whatsoever to vote for this group of Democrats. We've seen them defend adult racists attacking children. We've seen them say that you're guilty until proven innocent and destroy a man's life in Kavanaugh in front of his wife and children with heinous accusations such that he facilitated gang rapes with zero evidence whatsoever. We've seen them encourage putting COVID patients into nursing homes, and then when it predictably causes deaths, smugly point at those deaths in a callous way where they could care less that they've ruined lives and say, see, we were right, look at how many people died. We've seen them tell you that you can't spend time with your loved ones or go to your work to provide food for your family because this virus is so deadly, while they sneer at you and say, oh, but white supremacy's worse, so it's okay if hundreds of thousands of people violate these orders for a political cause that we agree with. We've seen them deflect, defend, or otherwise ignore riots that are occurring all around this country, burning this country to the ground. We've seen them suggest that the police and the National Guard do not have the right to defend normal Americans from the destruction that they're facing. We've seen them ignore the 32 people that have died as a result of these riots since George Floyd. We've seen them push back against possible medications like hydrochloroquine, which I'm not an expert and I'm not saying will help, but I'm saying at least there are doctors saying it could help. And they don't even want to have a conversation because they don't want a real cure. They want the pain and misery to continue. All of this we've seen. We've seen them even now after the RNC. Joe Biden's voters go out and brutally attack people. This is who the Democrats are. This isn't a few bad apples. It's the message that they're illustrating. Nancy Pelosi, probably the ideological leader of the Democrats, just called all Republicans enemies of the state. Maxine Waters said to chase Republicans so they don't feel comfortable in public. Ayanna Pressley said very similar things. We need growing unrest in the streets. If you're a Democrat and you don't like Joe Biden, or if you're a Democrat and you don't like the Republicans or Donald Trump, I understand. I'd have a conversation with you, but I get that. But how could you support these Democrats? Ted Wheeler's finding out. He's the mayor of Portland. He just recently, even after Kenosha, and when Wisconsin was forced to accept the National Guard's help, Ted Wheeler went to the social media to announce that he was still refusing that National Guard help. And now they've locked themselves in Ted Wheeler's condo building, and they're demanding that they'll chain themselves there until he resigns or removes all police and doesn't replace them with private security. This is who the left is. They will come for you. If you think that it's okay because they're just targeting Trump supporters or they're just targeting conservatives, they'll run out of those people to target, and then they're going to come for you. For every smug, wealthy person or someone who lives in the rural areas or lives in the suburbs that have looked at me and looked at people like Todd and Carlos that have brought awareness to this issue and said, oh, how dare you? You must be a bigot if you're concerned about these riots. They're mostly peaceful. What will you say when they're at your doorstep? What would they say when it's your family, when it's your wife being berated like Rand Paul's wife, when it's your children that are being attacked? What will you do when you're eating dinner and a bunch of Black Lives Matter anarchists and communists surround you and your family and demand that you raise your fist in solidarity with Black Power? It's coming to a town near you. The Democrats' agreement is we will burn down this country if you don't give us power. The only way to stand up against violent terrorists like this is to never back down. So protect yourself. Understand your liberties. Don't go out seeking trouble for trouble's sake, but understand our institutions are ran by these globalist, cultural, Marxist, etc., whatever you want to call them. They don't care about normal working class Americans. They're exploiting us based on race, gender, religion, sexual preferences, etc., so that they can continue to wipe out the normal Americans and the working class. Fight back in any way you can. Stay safe. And remember, there are millions of people out there just like you. You don't have to be afraid of them.
So
Rob, very well said. Carlos, if I may reclaim 1 minute of time.
Sure, go ahead.
I've just been informed that of all colossal unforced errors, the Williamsport Area School District continues to do that. They are mailing updated information for the reopening of schools coming up in the very near future. Do you know what was included in the letters they sent to parents and students?
No.
Masks. Unsealed masks wrapped with the letter. Carlos, I give back your time to you.
Like, real quick, people get the insanity of this, right? Unsealed masks. So now, if one person had COVID that touched those masks and packaged them, now you're breathing in COVID, what, hundreds, if not thousands of people in the school district?
And you've run it through the post office.
Oh, my goodness. Unbelievable.
Where any number of people or machines or what have taught. Carlos, please put your video back on. We just want to make sure you didn't fall on the floor.
So, am I to understand clearly from your final comments that Mayor Wheeler, they're coming after Mayor Wheeler now?
Yeah, they're right now as we speak. They've chained themselves in his condo. They had an impromptu metal concert outside his condo last night, and they released a list of demands. It says all kinds of crazy stuff. But yep, they're coming after him, just like they did Lori Lightfoot in Chicago. They'll use the police to defend themselves, though. So I just want you to know, normal Americans, you don't have that option. So you'll say, "Well, I'll defend myself." They'll throw you in prison for that, just like Kyle Rittenhouse. But yep, they're coming from Wheeler.
Wait, were the masks taped to the letter? Were they wearing gloves when they touched the tape that then touched the mask that then touched the letter? Ay, ay, ay.
So, the left believes that all evidence against their positions are irrelevant. That's why they're so comfortable in ignoring logical or intellectual contradictions or double standards at all in their policies and claims. And because of this, I want to make a couple of comments. I give no integrity to any debate that does not have honest and objective conversations surrounding debate. So I am going to take the left's posture of completely ignoring what you're saying if it's not honest and objective. I don't care. See, am I doing this right? So don't come and lecture me about anything, especially any of your stupid, high-minded pieties, when you've sacrificed nothing in your life. I don't care. But I will say this. I'm prepared to live in a world that has the United States Constitution or doesn't. As a matter of fact, I'm more comfortable with the latter, the one that doesn't have the United States Constitution, the one that has the old school rules of masculinity that come from the idea of Vikings and Mongols and Spartans. That's the world I want to live in. Because that way I don't have to count on someone else to represent my values or my thoughts. I get to represent them. You need to get stronger and better and faster and meaner and have more courage and have more mastery and have more honor, with or without rules. You don't want to miss next week's show on September 1st. I'm going to be making a huge announcement with respect to what I'm doing in my life, and it's going to catch a couple of you by surprise. But it's something that I thought a lot about, and is completely in line with that masculine world that I believe in, of us representing ourselves, because the breakdown in society today is we don't have leaders that stand up and say anything because they're too afraid, and they're too afraid because they don't have courage. It's okay. I'm not mad. I'm just saying that's what it is. Let's be honest about what it is. You don't have courage. So if you don't have courage, you can't lead. It's okay. I'm the one telling you so. And I'll tell you right to your face. If you're a leader. Hey, no, just let me rewind that. If you are in a position of leadership and you're not doing it right, I'm calling you out first because you are directly responsible for this happening, for allowing this to happen. And allowing this to happen, this is what it is.
No more cowardly lions.
I don't know one. I don't know a cowardly lion. So, until next week, protect yourself at all times, especially after the bell, because you never know what's going to happen in a week. Thank you, guys.
Stay safe.